So you can go ahead and take it away whenever you're ready then, Marylynn.
Okay, so hi everyone. I'm really glad you're here today. My name is Marylynn Windish, and I'm a counselor with Preferred EAP, and we are your employee assistance program. What I'm here to talk with you about today is mindfulness and using mindfulness at work so that we can better help ourselves and better help our clients and our customers, and cope with our stress in better ways so that we are feeling better ourselves overall and helping the environment at work to be a little less stressful, a little more enjoyable. And one of the things I just want to say is that my journey with mindfulness started many years ago as a therapist. I've been in the field for over 30 years and started working with a psychologist who was using mindfulness and mind-body interventions. And I found it so helpful that I just kept on going in my journey. And in 2010, I took a mindfulness-based stress reduction class that we'll talk a little bit more about during the webinar. And from then on, I was just really hooked. Personally, I found the benefits myself. And also as a counselor, I found how helpful learning about mindfulness and practicing it could be for all of the issues that my clients were coming to me for help with. So it is honestly one of my favorite things to talk about. And I'm hoping that you will understand that for yourself and get something out of the webinar today. I'd really like it if, I know you're muted, but as we're going through this, I'd love it if I could ask a question now and then, and if you feel comfortable, maybe putting it in your chat box, just giving me a little feedback so that I'm not just talking to myself the whole time. I want us to be a little interactive. If you know how to do that, Tyler, is that something you can tell people how to share from their chat box?
Yeah, so just if you have any thoughts throughout, you can either enter it in the question tab on your control panel or the chat function. It is possible that there may not be a chat function. So if you just submit it in the question tab as well, we will get it and make sure to bring it up.
Okay, all right, so that's in this little question box here. So I should see the questions or feedback coming up, is that right?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, terrific, great. Okay. So moving on to the next slide, okay. So I need to be able to give control to my keyboard and mouse. Any chance you can help me with that, Tyler?
Just try clicking somewhere on your screen, just like on the actual slide itself.
There we go. All right, great. And how about going backwards?
Yep, you should be able to do that with your keyboard.
All right, now I got it. Got it. Okay. So these are some of the goals of our presentation today, is to talk about what mindfulness is and the roots, where it comes from, why it is so relevant for us today in our world, talk about some of the common misconceptions that people have about mindfulness. I just want to briefly go over some of the research that has been done and how it has demonstrated the effectiveness and the benefits of mindfulness to us. And I want to focus specifically on how mindfulness can help us to respond in the face of stress or conflict or any kind of upset or discomfort versus reacting, because typically we are kind of hardwired to react. And one of the ways that I think mindfulness can be most helpful to us is to help us be aware that we have an option. Instead of just reacting, we can pause and slow down and learn how to respond to situations, which can help us, as we're dealing with our customers or our clients, or each other, our coworkers in the workplace. And then I do want to help you experience some brief mindfulness exercises, and then talk about ways that you can add mindfulness to your daily life. I can't see you all, but I'm assuming that everybody is sitting in a chair, or maybe standing while you're paying attention to the webinar. And I just want to take a moment for what's called like an arriving and centering practice. So if you could just take a minute to notice your body sitting in the chair or standing, and just letting go of the webinar for a moment, and bringing your attention into your own body, into yourself either sitting or standing, and maybe taking a breath here or there just to relax. See if you can relax yourself into the chair that you're sitting in. And notice, looking around the room where you are, just kind of taking in the moment, seeing what's around in the room. Maybe you're by yourself at home, working remotely. Maybe you're in the office with other people. Just using that sense of sight for a minute, just to look around and see what's going on. And then again, bringing that our sense of sensation in our body, noticing how your body feels at this moment, how it feels sitting in the chair. Maybe feeling your feet on the floor, maybe noticing your hands in your lap. Just bringing your attention inside for a minute, and taking a minute to maybe notice what are some feelings you might be having. Maybe you're feeling some anticipation or some anxiety, maybe some restlessness, maybe feeling really nothing at all. Just noticing what comes up for you in this moment. Then taking a second to think about where your mind is, what you're thinking about. Sometimes in the moment, we might still be thinking about something that happened in the past, maybe something that happened this morning that is, maybe a little upsetting or has us distracted. So just noticing what kind of thoughts are we having in this moment. Maybe we're thinking about something that's going to happen later on in the day, planning ahead for after the presentation or the work that we have to do. So not doing anything with that, just noticing, centering ourselves, noticing our thoughts and feelings, noticing our body and our sensations, seeing if we can relax in the chair and just let go of any tension we might be holding. Okay, so that was just a brief moment of trying to get our awareness and our attention focused onto where we are in this present moment. And that is basically what we're going to be talking about here with mindfulness. The roots of mindfulness do go back many, many, many years. It has its roots in Buddhist meditation 2,500 years ago. But what we're talking about today and what we're practicing in present times isn't a religious practice. It actually has been studied scientifically for many years, and basically studied by the study of mindfulness in our country was pretty much brought about late 70s, early 80s with a scientist named Jon Kabat-Zinn. If anybody has ever heard of Jon Kabat-Zinn or read any of his books, we're actually going to be talking quite a lot about him today because he is pretty much responsible for pioneering the use of mindfulness currently in all the practices that we have, scientific practices, using mindfulness in schools and education and healthcare. And the reason is because back in the 1979, he started a stress reduction program at the University of Massachusetts Medical Center. He was working with patients that had chronic pain and seeing that the typical practices that were being used were not always that helpful to them, the medication, and people were still suffering. So he himself had a background in mind-body practices and Buddhist meditation. And he knew the benefits himself, so he wanted to try to bring that to his practice, to scientific medicine. And he created a program called mindfulness-based stress reduction and started using it in his stress reduction clinic. And his work there, his early work there, is really what has brought mindfulness into our present modern society, because so much research has been based on his original mindfulness program, MBSR we call it for short. And that is the program that I took myself back in 2010 when I worked at Jefferson. The one that got me so interested in continuing on with this. So the research that we have, there's an enormous amount of research now showing the benefits, and a lot of it is based on his original work. So the research has just shown how effective it can be and how relevant it is to us in our modern society. So taking John Kabat-Zinn's definition of mindfulness, this is a cute little way of explaining it to you. I like this little picture here, because what he says is that mindfulness is the awareness that arises when we pay attention on purpose, intentionally, to the present moment and to our present moment experience. And when we do it with an attitude of non-judgment. So that can sound kind of complicated, but truly what it is, if you take it apart and you look at these three circles, is, what we're doing is taking our attention, our ability to focus, where we put our attention. And instead of just allowing our attention to wander, which, our attention and our mind wanders a lot of the time, instead of doing that, we're intentionally focusing our attention on an object, and the object being our experience in the present moment. And we use, a lot of times we'll use our bodily sensations as what's going on in the present moment, because they're happening right now and we're experiencing them. So they're a good anchor for us, a good place to focus our attention. And then he adds the attitude of non-judgment. And that is probably one of the most interesting parts of all of this, is because we often don't notice when we're paying attention that our mind does a lot of judging, a lot of, this is good, this is bad, I like this, I don't like this. I had a teacher one time who gave us an assignment of walking down the block. I was working in the city and walking down a city block, and the assignment was to walk down the block, and as you're walking, pay attention to all of the judgments that you're making in your mind as you walk down the block. And that was a real eye-opener for me, because we just don't notice how our mind is constantly judging things, judging other people, judging things we see, what people are wearing, how they're acting, what they're saying, what's going on for us, what we're seeing. And so when we're judging things, we're adding a lot of layers onto the present moment. And so what John Kabat-Zinn is saying here with mindfulness is that we want to be able to experience the present moment in its very raw form. We don't want to add anything to it as far as our own judgment or our own questioning or is this good or is this bad? It's a very open attitude of just being curious, like what is here? What am I experiencing in this moment? And as you'll see as we go along, that really is a very important aspect of mindfulness, is being able to notice when we're adding anything extra to our present moment experience. So when we put our attention or focus intentionally on the present moment, and when we do it with an attitude of non-judgment, that in the middle there, that's where our mindful awareness, this quality of mindful awareness can arise. And the wonderful thing about it is really that it's a very natural quality that we all possess. So this beautiful picture of the sun here, the question is, when's the last time you noticed a beautiful sunset? Or when's the last time you noticed a beautiful flower or had a meal where, just the delicious meal, where in that moment, your attention and your focus and kind of your whole being is in that experience, the experience of seeing the sunset or tasting the delicious meal. It could be a moment of getting a hug from somebody and feeling that sensation of warmth. So we experience mindfulness, moments of mindfulness all the time. It really is a natural quality of being present. When last night, I don't know if any of you noticed the moon last night, but I was driving home and it was dark and I couldn't stop looking at the moon. It was so beautiful, just very bright, and the sky was very beautiful. And it just kind of took me with it for a minute. So I'm bringing this up because mindfulness really isn't anything that we have never really experienced before. It's just a matter of recognizing it when it's there, and practicing using it when we need it. It kind of just grabs our awareness in the moment when we see something, that really takes our attention and our experience. But there's really, we don't add anything, we don't take anything away from what we naturally have in our quality of awareness. It's a very natural process, but we're not used to doing it. We're not typically in that kind of in the moment experience. So it can feel very unnatural from what we usually feel. Here's just some ideas about what mindfulness isn't, because sometimes people have a preconception about what it is. And it's actually not just thinking positively. Positive psychology and optimism are wonderful things, and the benefits have been studied. But that's really not what mindfulness is, because we're not trying to put a positive spin on anything. We're actually just trying to allow ourselves to experience what's in the moment, whether it's pleasant or whether it's unpleasant. Sometimes, we are experiencing things that are not that pleasant. And what we typically try to do is avoid those things, which can cause us all kinds of problems. So with mindfulness, we're not just focusing on things that are positive. We're not trying to turn things into a positive light. We're more just trying to allow ourselves to experience what's here in the moment. Mindfulness itself is not a relaxation technique. sometimes, and many times actually, relaxation can be a effect or an outcome of practicing mindfulness. And that is one of its benefits, but it's not a relaxation technique in and of itself. Relaxation can happen as a result, but the intention isn't really to help us learn how to relax. Mindfulness isn't going into a trance or hypnosis of any kind. Sometimes people think that, just like the woman in the picture here, is that we have to be sitting in a lotus position, with our hands in the mudra in the picture, and that's the only way we can do mindfulness is if we're in this kind of deep meditative state. And although that is one way of doing it, it isn't the goal. And we don't have to know how to sit in a lotus position or know how to put our hands in the mudra in order to practice mindfulness. So going into a trance or hypnosis is not mindfulness. Many times when I talk to people about mindfulness, they'll say, "Oh, I tried that, but I can't stop my mind from racing. I can't do it because my mind just keeps going. I can't get rid of my thoughts." And that's the misconception I find for most people. And I, try to tell people that getting rid of our thoughts or having a blank slate in our mind really isn't what we're doing with mindfulness. Our minds are very active. Our minds are thinking pretty much all the time. And that's normal, very, very normal. What we're doing in mindfulness is not trying to get rid of our thinking, but what we're doing is noticing our thinking and bringing our attention back to an anchor in the present moment, like I spoke about before, breathing or our bodily sensations. So we're not trying to not think, but when our thoughts do come up, we just notice them and we try to let them go and bring our attention back to the focus in that moment, in the present moment, which sometimes is our breath, sometimes is other body sensations. So it actually helps us, in a sense, have a different relationship with our thinking. Um, most of the time when we're thinking, we feel like we don't have a lot of control. We're just kind of following the thoughts. And when we practice mindfulness and we're able to notice a thought, let it go, bring our attention back to our breath or our body sensation in the moment, we kind of are able to free ourselves a little bit from thinking. But in and of itself, the goal is not to have no thinking in your mind. And mindfulness isn't just distracting ourselves. That is another misconception, because we actually don't want to distract ourselves. We want to do the opposite. We want to bring ourselves into the present moment. So hopefully that can clear up any misconceptions you might have. And why is mindfulness so relevant now? Sometimes I think people might even get sick of hearing about it because we hear about it so much. But I think the reason it's so relevant is that, over the past 30, 40 years, our society has gotten so much more full of information and distractions. I don't know if anybody here in the webinar is as old as I am, but I'm old enough to remember when no one could get a hold of you unless you were sitting in front of your phone at the very second that they were calling you on the phone, because there was no time, there was no call waiting, there was no cell phones, so I've been able to see, and if you're as old as me or anywhere near there, you can see the difference from how things were in the 80s, before cell phones and computers, and how they are now. A web consultant and a woman named Linda Stone, who worked for Apple and worked for some of the different tech companies. She actually coined a term back in 1998, I think it was, and she called it continuous partial attention. And when you think about it, we are many times in a state of continuous partial attention. Our attention really isn't in one area. We're always on. We're waiting for something to happen. We're looking for an opportunity. We're hearing our phone ring or ding. And so that this quality of continuous partial attention has really kind of tipped the balance away from being in the present moment to not being in the present moment over the past several years. And what research has shown is that this being in this state of continuous partial attention can really increase our stress. It can really decrease our ability to focus and concentrate on the present moment. So it has had an effect on us, and it is one of the reasons why we feel so much more stressed now with all of the technology in our lives. This is a really nice representation of how we spend a lot of our time. Our body is present, right? Our body is here, but when we really pay attention to our mind, where's our mind? What are we thinking about? Many times we may be here in the present moment in our body, but our mind is still focused on something that happened earlier in the day or something that happened earlier in the week, or maybe an argument that we had this morning with our kids or our partner on the way to work. So we might still be thinking about those things. Then, on the other hand, sometimes our mind is in the future. Many times we're thinking ahead of what we have to do next, or we're planning, what we need to do, what are we going to have for dinner. And it's not that either one of these things are wrong. It's part of the human condition to think about the past and think about the future. But what we want to do with mindfulness is try to balance that out a little bit, to purposefully have ourselves be in the present moment so that we're a little more balanced rather than being in the past or being in the future. Has anybody ever noticed times when they are on autopilot? Autopilot, I think, is one of those things that we all experience from time to time. Have you ever gotten into your car on the weekend and your plan is maybe to go to the grocery store or go to an appointment, and you're driving and driving, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh my goodness, I'm driving as if I'm going to work. Not going to the store. I wasn't even paying attention. My mind and my body just automatically started doing what it's used to doing. So we do spend some of our time on automatic pilot because our minds are focused elsewhere and not on what we're doing in the moment. The next thing I want to talk about is our nervous system and how we respond, how we react to things that go on. As you can see in the little picture here, most of us are aware of how our nervous system is there for us as a survival mode to help us be able to respond to any kind of threats. If you're driving and change lanes and all of a sudden you hear somebody in the background beeping their horn at you. This has happened to me. I'm sure it's happened to you. You're changing lanes, but there's somebody in your blind spot. You didn't see them. So right away, you hear that noise and it puts you into a heightened state of awareness because, oh, got to pay attention now. or if you're crossing the street and a car comes, we get this this feeling of heightened awareness and stress. Our body goes into fight or flight mode. We can have this triggered many times throughout our day if we're talking to a coworker, getting into a conflict, or talking to a client on the phone, and the person is getting defensive or becoming argumentative. We may notice ourselves going into this fight or flight mode because we're being triggered. So one of the things that mindfulness can help us with is when we're aware that we're going into the fight, flight, and freeze mode is when we just, are like a deer in the headlights, when we don't know what to do, so we just freeze. And that is the part of our nervous system called the sympathetic nervous system. Mindfulness can help us get in touch with our parasympathetic nervous system, which is the part of our nervous system that's called the rest and digest, where we can learn how to slow down our stress level, use our breathing and our awareness of the present moment to become more grounded and calmer. There's a lot of research now on how the vagus nerve, which is part of the parasympathetic nervous system, how that can help us get to a place of rest and digest, or oh, sorry, I accidentally did that, or what's called the tend and befriend part, where we feel very comfortable and very safe. So this is one of my very favorite pictures here, if you can see it. This is actually from John Kabat-Zinn's book that is called Full Catastrophe Living. And here he talks about the differences between stress reaction and stress response. So on the left-hand side, you can see here at the very top, here's the external stressor. So whether it's something going on in your environment, maybe a meeting coming up with your supervisor that you're nervous about, or getting a call from one of your kids, not knowing what's going on. Our fight or flight nervous system kicks into gear, and right away our body goes into hyperarousal. Blood pressure goes up, our pulse rate goes up, and we can get into, if we get stuck into this stress reaction mode, many times we can develop things like anxiety, like sleep disorders, or chronic physical ailments. Our stress reaction is there to help us survive, but what happens to us many times is that we get stuck in that mode because there's so many things feeling stressful, so many feelings of overwhelm, that we can feel like we're in that stress reaction mode all the time. And I'm sure many of all of us have had that experience. And what we notice then is that when people are having a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, a lot of worries, one of the first things that happens is it makes it difficult to sleep, right? Your mind is racing, you have difficulty sleeping. Sometimes we tend to move into maladaptive coping mechanisms. When we're stressed, we might come home and have a couple drinks to take the edge off, or for some people, things are going on in their lives that are stressful. They might work too much, overwork, distract themselves so that they don't have to think about some of the other things going on. Eating, smoking, caffeine. So some of these maladaptive coping mechanisms are what lead us to even further breakdown, even further physical or mental or emotional exhaustion. So you can see that there in the picture. And then if we go over to the right side, the right-hand side, here we have the same external stress events happening. We have our bodies responding. But when we use mindfulness, we're able to slow down that reaction. We're able to be aware. What am I feeling? What am I thinking? Let me just kind of, see what's going on here. And we're able to pay a little bit more attention to what's going on in our bodies. We're able to maybe notice that, if we take some deep breaths, we can calm ourselves and relax ourselves a little bit more. And then we can think a little clearer when we're not so stressed and so reactionary. We can think clearer when our minds are clearer and calmer. We can many times resolve things or see things a little bit better. And we can see that we have choices that, we can either react or we can do something else. We can, before that meeting with our boss, instead of going into that meeting being all hyped up and all stressed, we can instead recognize we're feeling all hyped up and all stressed, and instead maybe take a walk around the block before the meeting, or take a few minutes and just take some deep breaths to help calm ourselves down. And when we do that, we notice that we can find our own place, our own sense of calmness in the moment that can be really helpful to us. So when we have stress, we can't get rid of stress, right? It's there, it's part of our lives. But what we can do with mindfulness is recognize that we have a choice, right? We can either just react the way that we've always reacted, or we can pause. We can focus on what's going on in the present moment. We can take some breaths. We can respond. And so it gives us a choice. It gives us a choice. And the more we practice, the more choice we have, the better we get at responding versus reacting. Here is a quote that I've always loved this quote. And it is attributed to, if anybody is familiar with Viktor Frankl, who wrote this amazing book called Man's Search for Meaning, about his experiences as a Holocaust survivor. And what the quote says is, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So it's the recognition that between the stress or the stimulus and what happens to us, there's a space between how we react, how we perceive that event, and what we do. And we can choose to either continue to just react as we always have, or we can find that space. And mindfulness helps us find that space. It helps us slow things down enough so that we can then think, we can be a little calmer, a little clearer, and then choose how we respond to the events in our lives. And when we can choose and respond, that's where we do have choice, and we have growth, and we can find a little bit of freedom from our habitual patterns. So mindfulness itself is a very simple concept, and it's simple, but it's not that easy to practice. So it does require practice. When we first start practicing mindfulness, we tend to focus our attention on our breath. And as we're focusing on our breath, we notice that our thoughts are taking us away from our breath. And when we notice our thoughts, we bring our attention back to our breath until the next moment when our thoughts take us away, which they do, and we notice that, and we bring ourselves back to our breath. So what we're doing is really learning how to regulate our own attention, how to take control over where our attention is and what we focus on. And just like anything new, it doesn't happen overnight. We can't run a marathon without practice. And, the more we practice mindfulness, the better we get at it. As John Kabat-Zinn says here, by repeatedly bringing your attention back to the breath each time it wanders off, our concentration builds and deepens, much as our muscles develop when we repeatedly lift weights. If you think about how when you repeatedly lift weights, that muscle gets stronger. Well, as we practice mindfulness, that little muscle in our head, that mindful awareness muscle, gets stronger. This, of course, is taken from his book, Full Catastrophe Living, that I mentioned before. The full title is Full Catastrophe Living, Using the Wisdom of Your Body and Mind to Face Stress, Pain, and Illness. And if anybody is interested in a book, where to start focusing on this, I highly recommend his book. It is really wonderful. It's written in 1990, and it's been revised several times now. So when we become more aware of our thoughts and feelings, that can help us cope. Because when we are just reacting and we're not really aware of what our minds are doing or what our feelings are doing, that's where sometimes we can fly off the handle. We can say things that we didn't mean to say. We can escalate a situation. We can raise our voice. When we're not aware, we do fall into sometimes very habitual patterns. So as we become more mindful of our thoughts and feelings, we don't really avoid these unhelpful or negative or distressing experiences. We learn how to cope with them. We have an increased capacity to be with distressing or unpleasant feelings. We notice what is here in the present moment to appreciate. Sometimes, we can spend a whole day without noticing anything positive that happened, or saying thank you to somebody, or being grateful. So when we're more in the present moment, we can see not only what's here that's stressful, but we can also notice what's here to appreciate. So becoming more accepting and helps us to increase our ability to cope with things and deal with things in a different and more effective way. This is just a slide that goes over some of the research that's been done over the past 30 plus years. The ways that mindfulness has been shown to be helpful, helping us with our mood, helping us decrease anxiety, helping us improve our focus, improved sleep, which I have to say personally, I used to struggle a lot in the past with sleep and my mind racing at night. Now I don't. Practicing mindfulness and meditation has helped me with that, and it's certainly a good reason to give it a try. Eating mindfully, fostering a feeling of compassion, being more open and accepting to ourselves and others. Mindfulness has been shown to be very helpful with parenting, helpful in the schools, and helpful with healthcare professionals. How can it help us be more compassionate with ourselves? Well, when we do slow down and when we do focus on not being judgmental, trying to not criticize ourselves and others as much, there really can be a sense of kindness that we find within ourselves. We remember our essential goodness as human beings. We can notice that, we all react. We all have habitual patterns that get in our way. And when we can see that in ourselves, we can start to see that in other people too, and maybe not be so judgmental about how they react. We can remind ourselves that we're really all interconnected. We really we share common humanity. No such thing as perfection. We're all in this together, and we're all, it's about progress, not being perfect, but constantly growing. And as we practice this, these qualities can become stronger. There has been research about the effects of mindfulness at work. I don't know if anybody here has ever worked in a call center, but call centers are places that are typically very stressful. People answering the phone one after the other after the other. Talking to people who might be frustrated or angry. And so call center employees have a lot of stress. So this is just an example of a call center research study that was done where the employees learned a brief mindfulness intervention. So each day for 5 days, they listened to a guided meditation for 10 minutes in the morning before they started their day. And they listened 5 minutes to another one after lunch. And believe it or not, just those few minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, really helped increase their ability to be mindful and aware. It did help decrease their stress, their anxiety, their depression, their fatigue, their negative, distressing feelings, helped them feel more capable and more able to deal with their jobs. Here's another one that was done at Dow Chemical, where they put one group of employees in an online mindfulness program and the others didn't. They looked at the results. The employees that were involved in the mindfulness program reported having less stress. They reported having more energy, feeling more able to cope, feeling more engaged in their work. So those are just a couple examples of research that's been done to show how we can help. And just want to put it out there, just from what we've been talking about now, can anybody think about how practicing mindfulness could be helpful to how you treat your coworkers or how you treat your clients? Can you think of some ways that mindfulness may be able to be helpful for you in your daily work? Just seeing if you have any thoughts about that. If you were able to, instead of react, take a moment, slow down, be aware, and respond. Do you think that you might change how you react to other people? Or maybe take a moment to appreciate or recognize that if somebody's upset and if you react with upset, it's not going to help the situation. But if you're aware and you react, if you respond from a place of awareness and calmness, that you can share that calmness with the other person. Instead of escalating a situation, you can de-escalate it. Okay, so I'm not seeing any answers, but hopefully we'll get a chance to go to any questions at the end. So mindfulness is something that we practice. There's formal mindfulness and there's informal mindfulness. Formal mindfulness can include sitting meditation. It can include doing a practice called a body scan. Yoga, mindful movement is a formal practice. Mindful eating, focusing on eating in the moment, walking. These are formal practices, but we don't have to commit to formal practice all the time in order to see benefits. We can also do mindfulness on an informal basis. We can use mindful moments throughout our day. We can just take a few moments here and there and be mindful, and that can have a benefit for us. So now in the time that we have left, what I want to do is do a brief mindfulness exercise with you so that you can really get the sense of what we're talking about here. So there is a practice that's called a body scan. When you're taking a mindfulness class, it's one of the first practices that you learn because it can be very helpful. So what I want you to do right now is wherever you're sitting in a chair, if you're standing, take a seat, try to relax in the chair that you're sitting in. You can close your eyes if you like. If you're not comfortable closing your eyes, just lower your gaze a little bit so that you're not really looking and focusing on anything in particular. And then taking just a couple deep breaths. Allowing yourself to feel comfortable wherever you're sitting. Beginning to bring your attention to the sensations in your body. So as you're sitting in the chair, see if you can notice the weight of your body in the chair. Notice where your body is making contact with the chair, where your body is on the seat, maybe feeling the back of the chair, noticing where your hands are, either on your lap or on the chair, just noticing the sensations in your body, in your hands. Putting your feet on the floor, noticing that connection of the bottom of your feet with the floor. So bringing our attention into these sensations within our body, and then noticing that we're breathing, not trying to change our breath in any way, but just noticing the fact that we're all breathing. And if it's comfortable for you, hone in on where you feel your breath in your body. Maybe noticing the rising and falling of your chest or your abdomen. Noticing how it feels as the air comes in and out of your nose. And if that's not comfortable for you to focus on right now, choose another area of sensation that may be more accessible to you. Maybe feeling your hands in your lap or feeling your feet on the floor. And now we're going to do a brief body scan. We're going to take our attention and move it through different areas of our body, beginning with our feet. So taking your attention and your focus and just bringing that attention to your feet, your right foot, your left foot, and just noticing what's here to be sensed. Noticing any feelings. Are there any feelings going on in your feet? Are you feeling any pressure or connection with the floor? Are you noticing the feeling of the shoes on your feet? Maybe not noticing anything at all, and that's fine too. We're just being curious to see what sensations are present here. And now moving our focus from our feet to our legs, moving your attention to the lower leg, the upper leg, the left leg, the right leg. Just allowing your awareness to focus on these areas of the body and noticing if there are any sensations here. Maybe noticing the sensation of the back of your legs on the chair. Maybe noticing the feeling of clothing. Just paying attention to whatever's here, whatever sensations you feel. And sometimes not feeling any sensation, and that's perfectly fine too. And then moving your focus of attention from your legs to your pelvic area, to what it feels like sitting in the chair, noticing any sensations in this area. Maybe noticing the pressure of the chair. Just allowing your attention to center in this area. Noticing any thoughts that might come up, any feelings. Just bringing your attention back to the sensations in your body. And then moving to the stomach and chest area. Noticing those feelings. Maybe feeling the rise and fall in your body. Moving now to your arms, your shoulders, your hands. Bringing your attention to those areas. Just noticing what's here. Maybe noticing a feeling of tingling or temperature, warmth, coldness. Moving your attention now to your face, your head, seeing if there's any tension in these areas, any tightness. Maybe allowing some of those areas of tightness to relax a little bit. And now letting go of the focus on the head and the face and bringing your attention to your entire body. Just feeling the entire body from head to toe, feeling any sensations. Again, not judging them, just noticing them. And maybe now if your eyes were closed, just opening your eyes, looking around, taking a breath, maybe doing a little stretch. Since we've been sitting here now for an hour, if you need a little stretch, go ahead and do that. And I see that we have done our full hour here, and I did talk a lot, so I'd love to hear from any of you on any thoughts that you might have on how this experience was for you. Please feel free to put some questions or any thoughts or any feedback in the chat box. I'm going to skip over here to some ideas, some tips, ways we can be mindful throughout the day. We can give ourselves little prompts, little reminders. We can, put an alarm on our phone. Just take a moment here or there to just breathe, to just stretch. Take a moment throughout the day just to figure out where you are, how you feel. Slow down. Be more intentional. Don't put so much pressure on yourself. Notice things like your first cup of coffee in the morning. Just take a minute to really be with the sensations, the feeling of the warmth in your hand, maybe the taste of the coffee, the smell of the coffee. Allow yourself to be in that moment and really appreciate it. Notice when you feel stressed. And when you're stressed, notice, are you holding your breath? Can you let go of your breath a little bit? Can you take some deep breaths? Can you allow yourself to be okay with some silence? You know, if somebody asks you a question, you don't have to answer it right away. You can take a moment. You can allow some silence. Give yourself a minute to respond. When you leave work, listen to 5 or 10 minutes of meditation before going home, or start your day with some guided meditations. There's some wonderful apps out there. I recommend Insight Timer. It's a free app that has many, many guided meditations that you can start your day out or maybe do on your lunch break, or listen to a 5 or 10 guided meditation before you go home. There's some sleep meditations in there. If you're having trouble sleeping, I recommend people listen to those. So there are many ways to be mindful. You can start a formal practice, or you can just use some of these informal mindfulness techniques. The goal is, like I said earlier, to really balance it out, to be more aware, to allow ourselves to really be in the present moment a little bit more. Recognize that we can respond, we can pause, we can handle things a little bit better maybe than if we hadn't been aware and if we had just reacted. Okay. So I hope this was helpful for you. I do see that we did start a little late and we're ending a little late. So I very much apologize for that. If anybody has any questions or any feedback, I'd be very happy to hear it. Okay. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I really appreciate it. And go to our website, Preferred EAP. We have mindfulness classes. We have mindfulness recordings there. We'd be happy to have you join one of our classes. So feel free. Okay. You there, Tyler?
Yep. Thanks, Marylynn. I'll go ahead and close things out.
Okay. Is everybody off?
No, not yet. Folks
okay.
are.
If anybody's there, if there's a question or anything you want to talk about, feel free.
I do see we've had some responses, mostly just appreciation posts in the questions tab, if you're able to see that.
Ooh, you know what? I didn't have it open all the way. So I didn't, but wow, there's a lot here. This is great. Preventing overaction at work is a big plus, yes, for the work climate. It earns respect as a team member. You're more focused on patient care, less confrontational. Mindfulness in the workplace can foster respect and honesty. I feel mindfulness relaxes me. Why mindfulness, not relaxation? Well, as we said, relaxation can be a result of mindfulness, but it isn't always. Really worked for me. Great, glad to hear it. Great webinar. Thank you, Will. Okay, so you want to attempt to be attempt to be more mindful daily. Wonderful. Very insightful. We are doing self-care and mindfulness exercises in my nurse residency class. I'm so happy to hear that. I do, in my work, I do talk to a lot of nurses, and I know you guys have a really tough job and can really benefit from this. So I'm so glad to hear you doing that in your residency class. Did I miss anything else, or do you think I saw all the feedback?
Yep, I think you've gotten through most of it for sure.
Okay. All right, great. All right. Well, that was fun. I feel like I talked a lot, but
No,
do you feel like it was
great.
helpful? Good?
Absolutely. I thought it was very good.
All right, great. So how many people overall did we have attending?
I think we had somewhere in the 40s. We still have 19 on, so I'm going to go ahead and close this out though. But if you want to catch up afterwards, we can certainly chat.
Okay, great. Listen, if you're still on, if you have any feedback or you have any questions, feel free. Let me see. This will be a revival of ways I would like to carry mindfulness throughout my days at home and work. Thank you. You're very welcome. I'm so glad you're going to do that for yourself. What is the free app again? The free app is called Insight Timer. It's completely free. You'll find it on your, wherever you find your apps on your Apple phone. Just type in Insight Timer. It looks like a little Tibetan singing bowl. That's what the icon looks like. And when you go on it, you'll see that there is an option to buy courses. You don't have to buy the courses. There's a library of over 100,000 different guided meditations, all different areas. There's stress, there's anxiety, there's sleep, So many different areas that you can click on. You can donate to the teachers if you like, but you absolutely don't have to. You don't have to put any money out for this app, which is one of the reasons why I like it so much and why I recommend it to pretty many, all of my clients nowadays. It really is wonderful. So that's Insight Timer. Thank you. Your voice is calming. I'm so glad to hear that. I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, as I said, I practice all of this myself, and I have noticed the benefit personally as well as professionally. So good to hear. Okay. Anybody else still on? Thank you so much, everybody, for participating. I really appreciate the feedback too. So whenever you're ready to turn off the recording.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and shut things down now. Thanks, Marylynn.
All right, great.